Is Netflix the holy grail for filmmakers right now?
Yes, I think in general it is. It's kind of the dream right now for most filmmakers is to get on Netflix because it has such a huge audience and it has such an impact on culture in terms of being in the zeitgeist. If you have a film that gets released on Netflix and it gets in the top 10, that means, the world is watching it and, it becomes an important film and you kind of make your mark. And, I think most filmmakers want their films to be seen by a lot of people, and with Netflix it happens all at once and overnight. And so in the first couple weeks that you're on Netflix, it can kind of change the trajectory of your career if it does well and people are talking about it. So I think right now it is the premium place that most filmmakers want to be.
Kind of like what they used to call the Oprah effect. If a
Yeah.
business would come on or someone's book, that overnight it just transformed their career.
Yeah, it can be, overnight, a film can pop on Netflix unexpectedly too, and everyone's talking about it and they get known for it. But I will say they also, disappear quickly as well because they kind of, come through in the first, 30, 60 days and then, drop off a lot. So, if you don't get that big pop at the beginning, a lot of times, filmmakers can be disappointed because it feels like it just gets lost in thousands of other titles after, its first kind of window on the premiere of it. So it's, I think, still, Netflix doesn't really do theatrical releases, per se. They've found that it doesn't really work, for their model as much. So, other filmmakers that really believe in theatrical might have a different take and may want, someone else like Amazon MGM and do a, more traditional theatrical release and go that way. So that might be their, kind of holy grail in terms of distribution at the moment. But I think most filmmakers are united in that they want, a lot of people to see their films and to appreciate them. And, Netflix gives them that opportunity, on a global scale.
If a filmmaker wants to get their movie on Netflix, what do they need to know? What do they need to do?
So, Netflix, I think, their buying changes all the time. And so, the buyers there change around, a lot. People move, to different positions there on a regular basis. And so it's tough to kind of gauge the buyers there because you're dealing with different buyers every couple of years usually. But filmmakers should know about Netflix is, lately they're not buying as much independent film. They've really seemed to focus on bigger, more studio type quality films, $100 million, $200 million films with huge names. That they seem to get bigger bang for their buck. And, a lot of the smaller films they're buying are local productions. They're either, making original productions around the world through their local offices. And so they're just not buying, the quantity that they used to buy in terms of indie films. And I think the business is feeling that effect, too right now. I wish they would buy more and continue to support the smaller indie films. But when you're that big and you're spending that kind of money, it's really tough to move the needle. So, a smaller indie film, even though it might be, very successful for them, in terms of scale, what they're doing, it's not enough to move the needle against some of the much bigger projects that they have and, the bigger films that they're going to spend, millions of dollars to market. So they've just seen, really cut back in terms of what they're buying.
How has getting a movie on Netflix changed in the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think they've become much more selective in terms of independent films. They don't buy as many, and they're very kind of niche focused. It changes here and there. They got kind of big into the rom-com and the Christmas movie for a while, and they're still buying some of those. But a lot of the indie films that they would buy maybe in a package from a distributor, they're just not buying as many. So they'll take the bigger films and they'll put their money towards making originals that with big filmmakers and big casts, and less on the indie things. They've changed their buying teams quite a bit to focus on the bigger films. They brought in more studio type people to run the film side, and so there's less of an emphasis on smaller indie films.
What are the advantages of filmmakers getting their movie on Netflix?
I think the main advantage is the audience, the exposure that you get. I think when you are on Netflix, with well over 200 million people have access to your film. It's it's amazing as a filmmaker, especially if it's promoted and it's served to millions of people, and they can all watch it at the same time, and so you can have a conversation culturally just like a theatrical release. So if everybody runs into their friends, hey, what are you watching? It's not oh, what did you see at the theater last week? It's like, oh, what did you watch on Netflix? And so it's it's become kind of the cultural water cooler fodder. So people watch things on Netflix, talk to their friends about it. Almost everybody has access to Netflix, so they can go find a film if their friend mentions it. It's pretty low cost in terms of compared to going to the theater to watch a movie. So it's a game changer in terms of getting that many people all at once to have access to your film. And if it does well, if it becomes a hit and breaks the top 10 and globally, it can be a sensation.
You mentioned previously that one of the disadvantages of being on Netflix is there's no theatrical. Anything else?
I think there's so much on Netflix in terms of films that some people feel that they might get lost. Especially after their kind of window of being a new title. It's kind of goes into a library of thousands of titles, and it's not going to be prominently displayed for weeks and weeks at a time. So I think one of the disadvantages, some of the people feel like it after their short window of being, kind of a new title, that they're kind of lost in amongst, thousands of titles, and it's hard for people to find it or to come across it because there's just so many other good films there and such an emphasis on new titles that, sometimes they feel like, oh, well, it's just kind of gone now. No one's going to see it. But obviously the platform is so large, it gives them a great opportunity at the beginning. So hopefully, they think that overcomes, any downsides.
Sure, and they can put that in their, on their IMDb,
Sure.
and they can put that in their sort of any other press notes coming up. So it does give people credibility.
Absolutely.
Even if their film is, quote, getting lost, but yeah.
Yeah.
What are Netflix and other big streamers looking for?
Right now, the number one thing that all buyers are looking for is names in the cast. So they look for, commercial films with names. They look for, on the TV side, they look for showrunners who have track records that have, a successful track record of running a show for many seasons that has done well. They look for filmmakers with track records of making interesting, kind of artistically interesting films. But the number one thing are the names, and they like also big festival awards, but it has to be the Cannes Film Festival or the Venice Film Festival or something really large that can give them some credibility. But for anyone right now, it's just names. That's the first kind of thing everyone wants to know. Who's in it? Who's in it?
So instead of location, it's names.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yep. If your movie hits, let's say, the top 10 on Netflix or another platform, are there financial incentives or bonuses that come with that top 10?
Not typically. Most of the deals, with the streamers are, if they're licensing it as a flat, kind of a flat fee. So, it doesn't matter how many people watch it. You've still got your license fee, what it's based on. So there are other, types of deals. There are revenue share deals that they offer. Typically, though, those are films that they didn't want to license, but they, offer. Amazon does a lot of rev share deals with filmmakers. So, in that case, it could do well. But, typically Netflix pays a flat license fee, and however many views it gets, whether it's small or large, that license fee doesn't change. Or if it's an original, sometimes they do the cost of the film plus a profit for them to walk away for as a flat fee for a number of years. So if it does well, I mean, it can bode well for a sequel or something else that you want to do with them if your film does well. So that's a type of bonus, is they may want to do another project with you. But typically you don't see extra overages or anything depending on the viewing habits.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.